Today we're going to explore one of Korea's most stunning gardens. But what if I told you this peaceful landscape is hiding a secret? A story of tragedy, political corruption, and a quiet protest that's been hidden in plain sight for centuries.
When you first look at it, you see total tranquility. It feels like a perfect escape from the chaos of the world. But that's not the whole story. Not even close.
Because here's the thing, this garden wasn't built to run away from the world. It was built as a direct response to it. This entire place is rooted in a devastating personal and political tragedy.
So our story starts with the garden itself, and the man who poured his entire life into creating it as his own form of quiet protest. This is Soswaewon. It's considered a true masterpiece of 16th century Korean design. The name itself is meant to translate to a garden that is clear and clean, a place for purity, a breath of fresh air.
The man behind it was named Young Sanbo, and he was a brilliant scholar, a real rising star with a huge political career ahead of him. But then, all of a sudden, he just gave it all up, walked away, went back to his hometown, and spent the rest of his life building this garden. So the big question is, why? Why throw it all away?
To really get it, we've got to rewind a bit, back to when he was just a teenager and met the mentor who would change his life forever. Back then, if you were a smart, ambitious kid like young Sanbo, you followed the classic Confucian path. So at 15, full of ideals, he started his studies under one of the greatest thinkers of the time. And then, just like that, it all came crashing down. At 15, he's learning from his hero, the famous reformer Zhou Guangzhou. But only 2 years later, at 17, his world is completely shattered. His teacher is framed for treason by his enemies in the court and executed. And get this, to really feel the weight of this loss, you have to know that Zhou Guangzhou, this genius who had the vision to reform the entire country, was only 37 years old. His death wasn't just a personal tragedy for young Sanbo, it was a disaster for the whole nation.
So how could something like this even happen? Well, to understand that, we need to zoom out and look at the absolutely brutal political scene in 16th century Korea.
Okay, so the royal court back then was basically a battlefield for two completely opposite philosophies. On one side, you had Wangdol, the kingly way. This was the idealistic view that you should rule with virtue and morality. That's what scholars like Zhou Guangzhou believed in. But on the other side, you had Beidol, the way of the tyrant, which was all about gaining and holding power through force, manipulation, whatever it takes.
Zhou Guangzhou's execution was the moment the way of the tyrant won. Period. Idealism got crushed by raw power. So imagine being a young, principled scholar like young Sanbo, watching this unfold. It was a total betrayal of everything he stood for. The whole system just seemed broken and corrupt. So what do you do when the world you believed in just collapses? Young Sanbo's response wasn't just to get angry or sad. It was way deeper, totally philosophical. He turned away from the messed up rules of men and looked for answers in the laws of nature.
This whole choice really boils down to two key ideas. First, you have Wonri. Think of this as the principles of the human world, all the politics, ideologies, and rules that can get so easily twisted and corrupted. But then you have So-ri, which is the deep, unchanging law of nature. It's instinctual, it's authentic. For young Sanbo, the world's Wonri had failed him in the most catastrophic way possible. And this quote just nails it, right? The corrupt world of politics, of Peido, rushed to judgment and killed his teacher. So, in response, Yang Sanbo chose to step back and live by nature's rhythm, the rhythm of Seobri. He literally chose to go slowly. And this brings us right back to the garden itself and the incredible secret that's been hiding in its name this whole time. Let's look at that name, Soswaewon, one more time. For centuries, people have read these characters and understood them to mean one very specific thing. We've always thought it meant a clear and clean garden. And that makes sense, right? It's a beautiful name for a beautiful refuge, a place to get away from the dirtiness of the political world and just live a pure life. But what if we've all been hearing it wrong? What if young Sanbo wasn't actually trying to run away from the world? What if he was making a huge statement about it?
This is where it gets absolutely brilliant. It's a pun, a linguistic masterpiece, really. The way Soswaewon is pronounced in Korean, it sounds almost exactly like another phrase, Sojewon. It's a subtle but mind-blowing wordplay.
And Sojewon means a wish to sweep clean. This changes absolutely everything. The garden isn't a passive retreat, it's an active prayer. For his entire life, young Sanbo wasn't just growing a garden. He was nurturing a constant burning wish to one day see the corrupt world swept clean of the very tyrants who murdered his teacher.
So, when you put all the pieces together, what is this garden's true legacy? What does this all really tell us? Soswaewon was never about giving up. It was a subtle, brilliant, lifelong act of resistance. It's a symbol of what it means to hold on to your integrity when the world around you has lost its own. It's about choosing to live by the pure laws of nature, sobri, in defiance of the corrupt rules of society, wonri. It's a protest that has echoed for 500 years.
And really, that leaves us with a question for our own time, doesn't it? In a world that's always rushing us, pushing its own principles on us, how do we find our own way to sweep clean and protect the values and the integrity that truly matter to us?